the Overland Journal Podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and for this week, my co-host Matt Scott and I talk about our recent vehicle mashup. So this is all of the vehicles that we've been testing and using in the field over the last 6 months. That includes some really interesting time in the Ford Raptor R and in the TRX. We also spent quite a bit of time in the Hummer EV SUV, the Rivian R1S SUV. And then we had some really amazing surprises with the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trailhawk 4xe, which we'll talk about in great detail. And then we also were able to drive the GMC AT4x Sierra, which is their 1500 or their half-ton variant that even has rear and front lockers along with Multimatic suspension and a bunch of other things. We talk about some other cars as well, but this is really our overview of some of the newest Overland vehicles on the market. So please enjoy our conversation about trucks. This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com. So Matt, we have had a lot of cars.
All of them.
I think that this is the first time ever that we've actually had more test vehicles come through this parking lot than the vehicles that you have personally purchased.
Yeah, I'm a terrible person.
It has been, I mean, if we were to do the whiteboard list, there are many times that Matt is buying cars personally faster than we're getting in test vehicles. Yeah, but you got it's a fun hobby for you. And you have somehow managed to make it work and many times make money.
Yeah. Or lose only a small amount, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Which is pretty amazing. I mean, we've got a list of vehicles that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about the Raptor R. We're going to talk about the TRX. We're going to talk about the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk 4xe. We're going to talk about the Wrangler 4xe, the Rivian R1S, the Hummer SUV, the Defender 130, the Maverick Tremor, the AT4x, and also a big update on the Grenadier because I spent some more time in that incredible vehicle. So we were going to talk about some Grand Touring stuff, but you're going to have to wait till another podcast. We're just not going to make it work.
Too much on the too much on the docket.
Too much on the docket. But we are going to start covering a little bit more Grand Touring because it is such a fun way to travel. And Matt and I enjoy it. So that's what this has always been about, is doing the things that bring us joy. Grand Touring happens to now be one of those things. So we promise to not have too many sailboat or Grand Touring podcasts.
But people seem to like it.
They do.
I like talking about it.
The numbers have been good. Well, I think it'd be fun to start off with these super trucks. So the Raptor R and the TRX. It very much seems like the Raptor R was Ford's somewhat expedient response to the TRX. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I had a TRX when they first came out. It was
you had a Raptor too.
I had a Raptor. I think people thought that the Raptor R was going to be a TRX killer, and I don't think it turned out to be a TRX killer.
And I've driven them now back to back, and it's this is something worth talking about. We have always avoided testing these long travel, desert oriented trucks. Many people actually use Raptors for overlanding, and there are certain configurations where they actually make a lot of sense. In fact, when I rolled into Ushuaia on Expedition 7, the only other overlander at the place we were staying was a Raptor with a four-wheel camper in the back of it. They have been driven clearly.
Yeah, I mean, they're an F-150 with better factory suspension. They're a little wider.
The downside is they have always been neutered on payload. So you end up with a payload less than a Honda Accord in a full-size truck. And that means that you really can't put a camper in it. You really, I mean, if you have 3 full-size adults, you can't even put a 500-pound tongue weight of towing something behind it. So, but that is starting to improve. So the Raptor R, 700 horsepower, 5.2 liter supercharged V8, like 15 inches of suspension travel, 37 inch tires from the factory.
It's big.
And it has a 1,600 pound payload. So you can actually start to carry some stuff, put a lightning rack on the back.
Same as my Prospector was.
Yeah. So there you go. So, and that's after all the cool stuff. So it's got already got all the cool stuff on it, and it's got a 1,600 pound payload. So this was I've driven your TRX before.
Yeah.
Very short distances, but actually on a fairly technical piece of trail. And that shocked me how much articulation it had and how it performed.
It works with what it has pretty good.
Rear locker and everything else. But the Raptor R was really the first time I've had a long test period with one of these super trucks, and a lot of positive impressions on the Raptor. It feels like
cheap plastic. Sorry.
Well, and that's what we'll talk about, because that's the real difference with the TRX. But the Raptor feels like a very well executed performance package. So when it comes to driving at high speed on the dirt, when it comes to how the transmission works, how it actually drives in a performance setting, I was extremely impressed. In fact, it has an incredible amount of reserve capacity and performance. The challenge is finding a place to actually test that safely. So the only time I was able to do that was in a wash where it's not a public road. You're able to drive. You have plenty of
get after it.
Yeah, you have plenty of visibility. But everything else, you kind of have to be careful. And that's the downside to these trucks, is that they can be driven at speeds that are not legal on forest roads or BLM roads, which most of those have a 25.
They can be driven at speeds that just aren't safe, even in closed courses. I mean, you're talking about vehicles now that are approaching, like, they're not race cars is what I'm trying to get at, but they're approaching the same speeds, and they have pretty decent wheel travel now. And you can really get yourself into some trouble.
And 37s too. So the tire size has gotten so big. It's incredible. The Raptor just kept getting better and better and better as the speed went up.
Yeah.
It has, this is another thing. It has 700 horsepower. If you think you're going to hop in that thing and like stick it in two-wheel drive and lock the rear diff and like kind of have some fun with this thing, you're crazy. Like, this is literally what I do for a living. And I did that for a bit, and it was extremely fun.
You can put it in two-wheel drive still?
You can.
Yeah. And the TRX, it's all-wheel drive or nothing.
That's right. So yeah, you can have the Raptor in two-wheel drive, 700 horsepower going to 37 in the rear. And if you think about accelerating the car sideways, you haven't even touched the accelerator yet. Your brain has thought, I'm going to accelerate in this corner to get a little bit of rotation, and the car is already sideways.
It's moving.
And yeah, they are incredible. But what I found myself doing is just going into Baja mode, all-wheel drive, and then the thing was much safer, much more enjoyable, like over the top, absolutely over the top. But because it has a 1,600 pound payload, you can put a Lightner rack in the back. You put a roof tent on the thing that hopefully would hold together. I don't know what roof tent would be the right choice, but something that would hold together. Yeah. Maybe some deck drawers. You've got a great travel vehicle.
Practical that has a warranty, that has it'll have a great resale value. There's probably people that bought. I think when the Raptors launched, if I recall correctly, they started at just under $40,000. Those trucks now have 150,000 miles on them, and they're still $30,000.
Yeah.
Like that. We're talking about a car that has a really, really great residual value. It's an F-150. It has all the practicalities of an F-150. My problem with them is there's the sticker price of a Raptor R. You're not going to get one at sticker price. Maybe in a couple years, you'll be able to get one. They sell for $150,000.
Yeah. It was incredible though. Yeah. And it's so inspiring to see the kinds of performance on the full spectrum. So let's look at a Rubicon, a 20th anniversary Rubicon.
Yeah.
And then let's look at a Raptor R. So as slow as you can go with the Rubicon, and it's like nothing that's ever been made before.
Yeah.
And then you have as fast as you can go, like a TRX or as a Raptor. And there's nothing like that that's ever been made before. 700 horsepower supercharged engines with over a foot of travel.
Yeah.
37. They're just unbelievable on both sides of the spectrum. It's so exciting.
And it'll be crazy to see where these things go, because obviously they have these very profitable models now. Raptor is big business, not only for Ford, but Ford dealers, because rather than selling an F-150, I mean, historically it was 5, 10, 15,000 under sticker. You're starting to create something that's desirable enough that people are paying, not only buying a more premium F-150, but then they're paying over sticker.
Yeah, everybody's making more money on it.
Yeah, and same with.
I can't even imagine what some of these people's car payments are, because it used to be that
9 to 10%.
It used to be that premium vehicles like that, they were really for the affluent, and people would come in and write a check for it. But people do. There's a lot of people that are rich. There's not a lot of people anymore that are wealthy. And the distinction that I put is someone that's rich makes a lot of money, but they have no cash. And it used to be that wealthy people would go and buy a Rolls Royce or whatever, and they would pay cash for it because they had so much money.
Yeah.
And now you have these rich people that have good income, and they can afford a $2,000 a month payment.
There's so many Raptors and there's so many TRXs in the town that we live in.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, you're not going to be in most towns in the West, and I'm sure the East. You're not going to be. Your goal is to be the unique guy on the block. You're probably not going to do it with a Raptor or a TRX anymore. But there's a reason for that. We know that these trucks are fantastic on the road. Like I'm
shocked.
I think my Raptor was a 2018. They have upgraded them from them. They went from having leaf springs in the rear to coil springs and a 5-link in the rear, kind of this trailing arm design that's really cool. Did they get a little bit more power? But it's a similar drivetrain, a little bit more wheel travel, a little bit more refinement in the cab. And then you have the TRX, which is just this.
So let's shift to the TRX, and then maybe I'll give a little bit of my insights around comparison. But I drove your TRX, but I was very much, I had a job to do with it that day with a rack that we had on there that we were getting some photography for. And it was amazing. But I didn't drive it for that reason. And plus I'm driving my buddy's truck, so I'm not going to be testing.
Jump it.
I'm not going to be testing your car. The thing that I noticed, I just came out of the Raptor.
Yeah. And you had that last week. Yeah.
And I'm now in the TRX. The TRX is across the board. It feels more premium. It feels more super truck. It feels more powerful. It is much more comfortable on the road.
Yeah.
It's quieter than the Raptor. The TRX, in my mind, feels like this premium, expensive super truck.
Yeah.
Whereas the Raptor felt like a very well-engineered off-road high-performance truck.
Yes. I think that the Raptor is a better... Yeah, I'll say it. I think that the Raptor is a better off-road truck. I think that they're a little bit less precious. I think they're more wheel travel, more of an aftermarket, more aftermarket availability. Like the problem with the TRX, if you like to, fiddle with things, is you're kind of looking at what you're going to get out of that platform. You're not going to get much more wheel travel. You're not really going to fit much more of a tire on there. Ford has this 37 package, which is like,
that's what ours was.
Super. I think the Raptor R's all come standard with them. Super, super, super cool. It's almost I'll call it a 3-way race. There's the Raptor R and there's the TRX. The best choice out of all of them is probably the standard Raptor. I don't think that you necessarily need the power of these vehicles. When you're in low range, you're not using it. You're on idle, and you cannot use 700 horsepower. If you want to see what the back of your truck looks like while you're still sitting in the front seat, use all 700 horsepower on these trucks. The TRX, it does not have the wheel travel to take advantage of 700 horsepower.
And it's softer sprung. So that means everything up until a big event, the TRX felt better. Very comfortable off-road, like cycling through washes and over bumps.
It's a lot more active suspension, I've found.
Whereas the big hits, the Raptor was like, it shocked me how good it was.
Yeah, more suspension travel is going to do that. And the aftermarket, the chassis on the Raptor has more capability in it. There are things that you can then go and do to a Raptor to make it I mean, a stock Raptor off-road, there are race cars that have less horsepower and less wheel travel that have roll cages.
Yeah, sure.
That's always been an interesting thing for me with these super trucks.
Yeah.
Is now guys can have I think how people build trucks has changed with the availability of all of these factory packages. It just makes more sense to have the car payment. We live in a society now
and the
that
warranty
is run on credit,
and the warranty and all the engineering that goes behind it.
Yes. Like I remember when the Raptor came out, I could build that. I'm like, okay, cool. Wait, and now it's just easier to finance or write the check at the dealer or whatever your final position is. Like, I don't really care about that. But a lot of people just go and, like you said, they want to have the payment, they get the truck, and it actually makes a lot of sense. That's frankly, I mean, that's what I do now is you can go out and just get one of these things. You do a few little modifications. Like that's why, I want to know how many Raptor Baja design fog pocket kits they've sold kind of thing. Cause that's really all that people are doing to them. You'll get some guys that do more, but I think that's like the Raptor crowd. I think the TRX is this grand touring pickup truck that's really capable off-road, but is so comfortable.
It was shocking.
Like,
I mean, for those that are interested in the difference between the two, when I was driving the TRX, I felt like I was in one of the finest luxury sedans that I drive a lot of those too. And it was absolutely quiet, plush, powerful. I just did an hour and a half each way drive yesterday, and it was seamless.
Yeah. I mean,
effortless,
quiet, powerful. My current daily is a E63S AMG wagon. It's really comfortable. I mean, if you're talking about an Autobahn cruiser or whatever that may be, that is the definitive car in that segment. The TRX is quieter inside. It is more comfortable inside because you just have more space. You know, it is a pickup truck at the end of the day. So putting your feet up on the dash or this or that or whatever, it's just very comfortable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It has all the power you need. I mean,
oh my gosh.
Yes, the wagon's faster.
By how much though? Like a TRX is 4 seconds?
4 seconds. And then this one's under 3, but none of that matters. I mean,
it's like a blink of an eye.
It doesn't matter.
They both feel incredibly powerful.
The TRX feels like a Mercedes.
Yeah.
The Raptor feels like a Volkswagen it just feels like a Ford.
Feels like an F-150.
You get, I mean, there's things that drive me crazy on Fords, and you still get that with the Raptor. It's the little, I mean, I complain about it all the time, but like the mold seam lines everywhere on an F-150, the like textured plastic with the leather grain in it. Yeah. You know, it's very, the buttons feel cheap. Everything kind of feels like there's engineering behind it. And then like an accountant came in and just, Ford, great engineers, even better accountants. That's just how I feel with the Raptor.
And it doesn't feel, even though the numbers are very similar, it does not feel as powerful as the TRX. And it's not as comfortable as the TRX, but it is a better performing vehicle at the limits in my experience. And now that I've driven both, I guess this is kind of my summary, more of as a validation of, are these great overland vehicles? I think for some people they are. But for me, no, I would not consider either one of these things for a personal vehicle, because I don't need something with 700 horsepower. I want something with fuel economy and range. I want something preferably diesel.
Yeah.
And for me personally, even though they are incredible tools, they are incredible performance machines. The TRX I liked a little bit better, but it wouldn't be a truck for me.
Yeah. I mean, I sold my TRX to get a Prospector. Prospector's, in that same financial realm as some of those trucks. Prospector's a better choice. If I was heading down to Baja or wanted to have a truck that, I've used these trucks. I've taken Raptors everywhere. I've taken TRXs everywhere. They're really fun. For me, is it an Overland truck? Yeah, for sure. Because you can just throw a tent in the back and you have this factory engineered long travel, whatever. You keep it within its realm and it's pretty good. For an off-road vehicle, I would still rather have the Raptor. For a luxury vehicle, I would rather have the TRX.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great way to just sum it up. But they're very cool. And for those that have them, in fact, if anybody's listening and they use one of those vehicles for their travels, I'd love to hear more about that. I'd love to see some photos. I'd love to see how you're using it.
People use them and have used them, and
they do.
They put up with it.
All right. So now we're going to move into the plug-in hybrid and EV territory. And we're going to talk about Grand Cherokee Trailhawk 4xe, Wrangler 4xe, Rivian R1S, and Hummer SUV. I think I'm going to start with this Trailhawk 4xe because probably for the first time in many years did I have a vehicle that completely took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Where I came in with a fixed impression or a bias. Let's even call it like I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, Grand Cherokees have always been there, but they're kind of like...
Yeah, they're good cars. Like it seems like my family owns 87 of them.
Yeah, they're just a practical choice.
Yeah, they are amazing vehicles. They've just completely gone off my radar as an off-road or an overland.
The Grand Cherokee has always been that like weird, like, yeah, some Wrangler parts and some Cherokee parts will bolt onto it, but the Grand Cherokee platform has just continued to get better and better and better and better. And it's particularly the Trailhawk 4xe is like, most people listening to this podcast probably should drive one.
I would buy one. Yeah. It is absolutely a vehicle that I would buy. I mean, let's just run down real quick through the specs. This thing does 435 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. It gets a combined, they call it like a MPGe between the engine and the electric in the 40 mile per gallon range.
Yeah.
It has 30 miles of electric only, which means you do all of your little local, like where we live in Prescott.
Yeah.
I could use electric only at 1/4 of the price of filling up the fuel tank. It has 31-inch diameter tires, all terrains.
That used to be big. That doesn't sound like much now, but that used to be really big.
It's plenty big.
Yeah.
It's plenty big. It has skid plates throughout, airbag suspension with 2 off-road height modes, which, to be clear, off-road 2 is used to clear over something. You do not drive in off-road 2. It is so brutal. There's no down travel left. But if you need to get over a ledge, put it in off-road 2, go over the obstacle, and then put it back down into off-road 1. Center locking differential, rear locking differential, low range. And this new one has a front sway bar disconnect.
That was the crazy thing that surprised me with it.
I didn't know it until I got into the car and I'm like, what is this magic?
Yeah.
Like on a Jeep Rubicon where you can push the button and you gain all of this articulation and you reduce head toss. This Grand Cherokee in off-road 1 mode, I mean, it flexes way more than I've seen any independent vehicle flex. And the head toss is way down. You don't get that really busy ride. You're not getting kind of tossed around the cabin. It still tows 6,000 pounds. So you're going to tow any kind of off-road trailer.
It's like the Overland. It's like the best daily driver an Overlander could ever hope for.
It's like the one car to rule them all.
Or whatever.
It's like the one car. Yeah. If you need to drive back and forth to work and your commute's 10 miles, you're never going to use any fuel.
Yeah. I'm just going to plug into your electricity. I don't even have to pay for electricity.
You do. You get to plug in anywhere you want. Matt, my electricity is your electricity.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
I think that this is an amazing car. I'm literally blown away by how good it is.
And it looks good. The interior quality, which is something like,
it's a little bit bigger car
for
too.
Interiors.
And it's good.
If cars are expensive these days, and
okay, and that's the coup de grace. So the coup de grace of these Trailhawk 4xe, and I didn't know this, because the way that we got the car was a little bit out of order. It just showed up. So I didn't do a lot of research. Brian McVickers drove it back from Moab and here all of a sudden we have this car. So I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. I thought we just had another Grand Cherokee. This vehicle with all of those features, it costs $68,000, which it still seems like a lot of money. But if you look at any car today, like we were just talking about Ford Mavericks that are being sold over sticker for $68,000.
48. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, so
it's
a hell of a deal.
You actually figure that when the world gets back to normal, the automotive world, the dealership world, that means that $68,000 MSRP, that means you're paying low 60s, high 50s for that in the real world, because the Grand Cherokee doesn't have that. Like most of these capable off-road vehicles, you're paying still $10,000 to $15,000 over a sticker for them. That's where it becomes reasonable.
It does. And I'm not saying it's better than any of the other great SUVs out there. I'm not saying it's better than it's on par with a 200. It's on par with a 4Runner. If you're considering some other vehicle like that, just go check this.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking.
Just go check it out.
And the 4xe drivetrain, like I've known quite a few people that have had these now. I've never heard them complain about reliability or having any issues.
Check out the Grand Cherokee Trailhawk 4xe. It's one of the vehicles that has surprised me more than anything that I've driven in many years. And also check out the Wrangler 4xe. There's a lot of resistance to EVs within the overland space for good reason and for, I think, misunderstandings. But one of the best-selling plug-in hybrids in America is the Wrangler.
It's the best-selling electrified vehicle in America in 2022, I think. Because
it's kind of how people use Wranglers. They don't tend to do long commutes in them. Yeah. So it has about a 25-mile electric range. They're quick. It has 435 horsepower. And then you can get it in a Rubicon. So you can have an electric vehicle, a hybrid vehicle, a gasoline-only vehicle, something with front and rear lockers and swivel bar disconnect on 35s.
The roof comes off. The doors come off.
It's like you can see why they sell 8 billion of these things.
They work. I see them all over Prescott. Again,
such a win.
The EV thing. If you live in a city, EV is probably ready for you now.
Yeah.
Where we live, kind of rural northern Arizona, EVs are fine for around town, but I don't know.
It's a little bit of a challenge.
It's a little bit of a challenge.
It's an infrastructure issue. Although Prescott just got its first supercharger. Oh, Yavapai College.
Okay, cool. So we're up from one charger with 2 cables at the Hilton Garden Inn.
We should talk about the Rivian R1S because there's not a lot that I kind of want to riff on with this car other than it's not only the best electric SUV I've ever tested, it's one of the best SUVs I've ever tested. And this is, for me personally, one of my most favorite cars that I've ever owned was a 2007 Range Rover Mark III.
Yeah.
And I loved everything about that car. While I owned it, it was very reliable. It was one of the most beautiful, capable, the broadest spectrum of attributes that I have ever had in a vehicle that I owned. The R1S most closely matches
like
that
the right
experience.
size.
Yes.
Like it's that Tundra, first gen Tundra size in the pickup truck and Mark III Range Rover and the SUV.
It's incredibly fast. 3.2 seconds, 0 to 60, 800 and something horsepower, 300 and something mile range, airbag suspension, 34-inch all-terrains from the factory.
It's huge. And the ground clearance, like when we had that one, I sat underneath it.
15 inches of ground clearance.
I'm like nearly sitting. It's not like I'm like trying to get underneath it. I'm like, oh, I'm underneath it. Like, oh, I can kind of sit up here. Like you drive behind a Rivian and it just, the architecture of the suspension looks purpose built.
It's really good. It's really good off-road. All EVs have the same issue, which is this kind of low speed climbing over big rocks and ledges. We've talked about that in the past, and the Rivian's not exempt from that, but it is an incredibly fine automobile. It's beautifully designed. It's so minimalist, which is just like makes me in such a happy place.
So we disagree a little bit on that. Like,
I know.
I really like it, but
I love the minimalist.
I want some damn buttons.
I love that. It's just so minimalist and like reductionist.
Yeah.
So
some of the interior feels a little cheap to me because I'm thinking, startup didn't need to design the buttons, put it in the screen. It's a simple solution. I get it. But Rivians also they're an expensive vehicle, but they're not as expensive as you'd actually think. Like
they're not crazy expensive.
I sold my AEV Prospector XL and I'm feeling dumb about it because I've now realized how expensive trucks have become.
Yeah.
Even though it was only 1 year, the cost of a pickup truck has gone up about 20% from my actual somebody who buys a lot of vehicles. It feels 20% more expensive, but the Rivians just aren't, you can get a Rivian R1T or R1S effectively new. So if you go to the website and you buy one, I think there's somewhere between 6 to 12 months on a delay.
And then double that.
Yeah, probably. But there's so many people that have basically just bought allocations to flip them that an R1T, you're looking in the 80 to 90 range, and the R1S being a little newer and fewer of them on the market, you're looking right around 100. You can't get an F-250 for that. You can't get a Raptor for that.
This is faster than a Raptor.
Yeah, you can barely get a standard. You're basically competing with regular pickup trucks.
Yeah.
Regular pickup trucks might be more expensive at this point if you're comparing speed and power and torque and all of that kind of stuff. It's very interesting right now.
Yeah, and the Rivians are amazing. And one of the things that I love about the company is that it is a startup filled with incredibly passionate people that truly believe in their product.
Yeah, they really do.
I mean, they've worked with Bill Burke. They really care about the off-road performance. And then they're going to come out with this dual motor model, and they're going to come out with some things that I think will make them even more appealing. But if you're looking at an electric SUV,
and you're not looking at the Rivian,
yeah, it's kind of amazing.
I do think, we keep getting little teaser tidbits of the all electric G-Wagon, which really excites me. But gee, what's the markup going to be on those?
Yeah, incredible.
I mean, G63s.
You have to have your own like nuclear power plant next to the house.
Yeah, unless it's some kind of, it's Mercedes. Their first car was electric.
Yeah,
the first car Mercedes made, electric. They're now getting back into electric. We had the EQS, and this isn't an Overlander. This isn't really a Grand Tourer, but it's important to get these new vehicles in to just compare to what they are to others.
Yeah. Learn the new technology. It's important to us.
The reason I bring it up is I think the Rivian's really cool. I do not like how it drives. It drives like a golf cart to me. Once you get past the kind of what feels like a one-trick pony of the instant power and the launch and that kind of stuff, the one pedal thing drives me crazy.
Yeah, it would be nice
because if you get any kind of motion sickness as a person, which however this works out, I do. You're always kind of like any change in throttle.
Yeah.
And you kind of get this feels like a car at 60 mile an hour in third gear.
It would be nice if they had a way to reduce that.
Yeah. And I don't think that it's that exciting it's exciting to drive because it's fast. I don't think that it's a good experience. But with the Mercedes, I loved how that car drove. It drives like a car that happens to be electric.
Yeah.
It is not.
You would never know that it was.
You would never know.
Yeah.
It has the option of the one pedal thing. But if you're not crazy on that, which I mean, I get why they're kind of doing it, but
I like it. I just know how to drive with one pedal.
It's all this weird thing, and I don't like it, but maybe I'll get used to it.
But I do like it.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
So there you go. I think the EQS.
I prefer it actually.
It just felt like more of a traditional car.
Totally. But it was the only thing I didn't, and we'll talk about the EQS in another episode a little bit
ugly.
more. It was not
so ugly.
From the front, it was handsome, but from any other angle, it was not.
Yeah.
And then what is the one thing about an electric vehicle that makes it totally unique? The frunk.
Yeah.
And that car did not have a frunk.
I didn't open the.
It was so sad.
Design-wise, it was just.
Yeah, it was bulbous. It was very eggy.
It was a Mazda CX-9.
Again, from the front, I thought it was handsome.
Yeah.
But any other angle, it was pretty egg shaped.
Yeah.
Which is also what made it incredibly quiet
and aerodynamic.
I mean, and so
serene to drive.
Serene to drive. Absolutely.
And those little pillows for your head.
I know, it's crazy.
But important to drive that stuff just to see how it positions.
And learn these new technologies because it's important to us because we know it's changing. Things are changing. Yeah. People are going to be buying them. So the other electric SUV that we drove was the Hummer SUV, which the Hummer SUV it's like driving any other, like a TRX or any other kind of vehicle in the sense that it has a regular shifter. You can turn off the one pedal drive. It drives very, very normal. I mean, it drives like a normal vehicle. And because it has the rear steer, it drives more compact than it actually is. It's incredibly fast. 3.5 seconds, 0 to 60 for that one under the launch conditions. And it looks a lot better than the truck. The biggest complaint I had with the Hummer truck is I just don't care for that kind of vestigial bed with the weird angle. to it. I just don't think it made the truck very handsome. Whereas the SUV in my mind is a lot more attractive looking vehicle.
I'm so impressed with so much that GM is doing right now. And then this Hummer thing comes out and it's like, oh God, it's bad.
But you know what's
it die.
You know what's going to happen though, is that we're going to end up with a Yukon AT4 electric, and it's going to look great. It'll be great.
And it'll be great.
So it is a very comfortable vehicle to drive. It's incredibly spacious on the inside. So the actual driving experience, the actual because Paula, our producer, was with me when we went to California to test the vehicle. She shot all the video. She drove it some. I drove it some. I got to be the passenger. It was just a very comfortable vehicle to be in.
Yeah.
A lot of space, very open and roomy. And it has tons of power, 35-inch diameter tires with long travel, 4-corner independent airbag suspension. It ends up being like a really nice car to drive for long distances.
I think that there's a lot of impressive engineering that has gone into that car.
Yeah. But there's a couple things that are a problem. The ground clearance is much less than the Rivian. It has this deceptively low quarter panel that because of the way they did the rock sliders, it kind of obscures the fact that the chassis is much lower than the sliders. And that's because that's where all the batteries are. So in the highest suspension modes, the breakover is fine. But in a lot of other cases, it's low in the center. And that also makes it incredibly flat steering. It's very low center of gravity. But that's one of the things that I notice is it's fairly low compared to like the Rivian, for example. And then I think it's also just that overall size. It's a very, very big vehicle. Thank goodness it has 4-wheel steering. So the 4-wheel
steering is a game changer.
It is.
And I think that we're going to start seeing that on more off-road vehicles. You don't always just have to crawl over something. You can also drive around it.
Yeah. And that works great for that. The crab mode's fun.
Yeah. There's a lot of very interesting engineering with that.
Watts to Freedom is fun. There's lots of things. It's a fun vehicle. It's definitely supercar, super trucky on the EV side. And I think it's what it allowed for GM to do is to fund the development of all of these systems. We're going to see in vehicles that are a little more practical.
The idea of a Yukon AT4x that has all of that technology
sounds amazing. Yeah,
that sounds great.
Yeah,
my qualms are purely of a styling and reputational issue.
It's pretty tough to unwind the H2 legacy. It's pretty tough to unwind that.
Well, yeah, but they have also this amazing legacy with the H1, and the H3 was a
much better car. Just came too late. The Hummer SUV is very interesting, very expensive, very obscure, unique styling.
Yeah.
So let's move on from the Hummer SUV to the Defender 130. I have such incredible respect for the Land Rover brand, and it all started for me from Land Rover. None of this for me would have happened if it wasn't for that cover of a 4-wheel drive magazine with the camel trophy on it.
Yeah.
And I've owned a lot of classic Land Rovers. I've driven Land Rovers around the world, and I have such just love. I wouldn't even say
love for the brand. Yeah.
Love for the brand. I mean, there's really not, I wouldn't say it's respect.
And the nicest people.
Yeah. They're just love for the brand. I just have just true affection for it. In recent years, I have not found that any of the modern they're all great cars. That's to be clear, but none of them have elicited that same passion for me or even the consideration of buying one until the Defender 130. So
interesting. Because it's kind of a car that nobody really asked for.
Yeah, but it's also the one that they needed to sell. The 110, it is fairly space constrained on the inside, and it has more of a departure angle than you need for a vehicle of that kind.
Yeah.
Like how you would use a really nice Defender doesn't require a 45-degree departure angle.
Yeah.
I like the fact that the 130 has more space in the rear. I also like how it balances out the appearance of the vehicle. Some people don't care for that as much as I do, but it actually reminds me, like if we look at the Defender 110 behind us, it actually has sheet metal behind the rear tire. Like there's actually some material there, which is not the case for the 110, the modern or the current model 110. Yeah. It's this very abbreviated. It looks more like a Defender 90 did, a classic Defender 90 did. Whereas the 110 always had some space behind it. So now the 130 looks reminiscent to me of the amount of space behind after the rear axle in a classic 110. It actually drives a little bit more balanced on the trail. The rear of the 110 is prone to popping up kind of unexpectedly or even a little bit more aggressively. Like we experienced that even a little bit on Van Zyl's Pass.
Yeah, I remember
like
that.
the rear would pop
it was
up.
It was the left rear.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The 130, because it has a little bit more weight over the back, it very
Flexes
much
a little bit more,
and it settles that movement down because there's a little bit more weight aft of the rear axle. It has a lot more space. You can buy it as a 5-passenger model next year. So you end up with this totally flat load floor. You can sleep inside the vehicle. I've gone on to the builder and I'm like, what does it take to build out one of these things?
I always look at building a Defender. Same with you. Like I have a huge admiration for the brand. The Defender is a lovely vehicle.
It really is.
I think it is one of, like, as far as interiors go, it's one of my favorite interiors ever put into a vehicle. And it's because they have that Defender dash where you get in, your pocket knife, your wallet, your phone, or whatever, you just like throw it in front of you and then you go on with your day, and it's really great. But there's always a but with Land Rover. And do I personally trust one, knowing that I live an hour and a half, 2 hours from the closest Land Rover, 100 miles from the closest Land Rover dealer? That's...
Yeah. And how much of that do you feel is reputation of, let's call it a 2001 Discovery 2, or how much of that do you feel is actually an issue with the current vehicle?
It's probably all of the above. Like I know that there have been quality problems with the new Defender.
They are made in a new manufacturing plant.
There was also a lot going on at that time. I mean, they were ramping up as COVID was starting. Not to use COVID as an excuse necessarily, but the automotive world got turned on its head with supply chains. So I always look at them, but anybody that listens to the podcast know that I don't really keep things for that long. So I'm really interested in a year at like a certified pre-owned Defender 110.
There you go. And then
perfect. Cause they'll be,
enjoy it for a year,
instead of them being 90 grand or 100 grand and really hard to get, they're going to be 45 grand
or 55 even.
Or 50. Yeah. Like they're not, and you're still have the same potential for issue. I don't know. I think that they're really cool. I think that they're really capable. I think they have a lot of features that are in them that are really nice. But
yeah, I like the 130. Yeah. And my only disappointment, in fact, this is the only disappointment that I have in the car, is that you can't put an 18 on it because it comes only with the 6-cylinder. Or by the time that this goes live, it'll also be available with a V8, which is a very nice
that gets the bigger brakes, which means there's no off-road 19-inch tires. So that means you're at a 20. You're at a 20.
And it's a mistake. It like every manufacturer, if you're listening to this podcast, it is a mistake.
Yeah.
The Hummer at 10,000 pounds. So I'm going to give a compliment to the Hummer. The Hummer is 10,000 pounds as the truck, almost. It has an 18-inch wheel. Yeah. If you can stop a 10,000 pound electric truck, you can stop a Defender with an 18-inch wheel. You can put the brake package on there that allows you to fit the wheel diameter that is appropriate for the vehicle's intention. The 110 is designed to be an adventure vehicle. It's designed to be an off-road vehicle. Even if it's not used in extreme terrain, if you take them in the sand, you can't air down low enough.
Yeah.
If you get into snow, you cannot air down low enough. There's not enough flotation. With those
decisions, they end up being, they never end up being in the consideration set for what the Defender was supposed to be.
But they did everything else. They give it a rear locker. Yeah. They give it crossed axle air suspension with good articulation. I just drove one in the Arabian desert.
Yeah.
Big dunes, trails, long distances driving around the country.
Yeah.
And I liked the car a lot. My big disappointment is the 20-inch wheel. It is not appropriate for the kind of
I'll deal with it on a Range Rover, but if you're going to throw that Defender nameplate on it, like
give us an 18-inch wheel. It's that simple.
Which you can get on the 110, right?
You can. That's right. You just have to get the 4-cylinder drivetrain. We're going to do rapid fire. So AT4X, we had the AT4X Sierra for a while. Incredible half-ton
Is that a newer
truck.
Generation, the one you have?
Yeah, it is. Exactly. So it is newer generation, brand new interior, very luxurious, rear locker, front locker, gets rid of that terrible G80 mechanical locker out of the rear. 33-inch diameter tires, multi-matic suspension, rock sliders, and now they have an AEV edition in the AT4X, which gives you AEV bumpers front and rear and a bunch of other cool things, and a larger diameter tire. So these are very cool trucks. I would have never imagined 5 years ago that GM would have the most capable half-ton pickup sold.
I would never, if somebody was like in the year 2000, I don't know when you got that one, 21, in the year 2021, Scott Brady is going to buy a GM product. I would be like,
I would have never thought it.
Yeah.
I would have never thought it. But it was, I mean, my truck has been fantastic. I love the diesel.
Super quiet inside.
And now you can get the AT4X, AEV, Sierra with all of the off-road goodies, and you can now get the 3-liter diesel again. So it's just like you can hear the cherubs singing. It's a really amazing truck. The only downside, again, is payload. You can load those things up to the point where you get pretty low on the payload number.
Yeah.
So you get really limited around truck campers, and the 1500 is not warranted for a truck camper. So you're kind of making a personal decision. Like if you do some damage to the bed or whatever, you're out of warranty on that. But amazing trucks. It's incredible to see what they're doing with that. Real quick, the Maverick Tremor.
I love the Maverick.
I'm a huge fanboy of the Maverick. You can buy a 4-cylinder hybrid front wheel drive model for about $24,000 if you could find one. They get 40 miles to the gallon. You have a mini truck. Yeah. We don't have mini trucks anymore.
It's a perfectly sized truck to put your mulch and your
mountain bike
or whatever,
or even a motorcycle in the back. The Maverick is just super cool, and the Tremor gives it the drivetrain of the Bronco Sport. So you've got this kind of a locker in the rear. They call it a locker. You actually have a locker button, but it isn't. It doesn't give you a mechanical locker. Yes, that's right. And then it has a center differential lock. It's got a larger diameter tire and about a 1-inch lift. Super fun to drive. I love driving them. I'm a huge fanboy of the Maverick.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we can buy a mini truck again. Go Fast did a cool one where they bought the truck and put the camper on there for less than $30,000 for a brand new vehicle.
Super cool.
With a Go Fast camper. That's just, to me, that's super fun.
It's not like a 30-inch tire?
30-inch tire, little all-terrain, little Falcon.
Yeah.
Wild Peak all-terrain.
It's such an interesting, that whole setup with the Go Fast is such an interesting thing because you're doing that for Subaru money.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the quality of the interior of the Maverick at low 20s is the same interior quality as a Raptor in the 80s to 90s. So it presents this very good value for money. I think it's the best product in Ford's range. And I knew that it took cojones.
They cannot make enough of them.
Yeah, it took cojones to put that in there because you're like, oh, people want bigger, more power, whatever. Or we actually want this.
But that's what they did. They released a mini truck.
Bravo Ford.
Yeah, totally. It's
rarely do I say bravo Ford.
Well, it's an awesome vehicle. And then the last thing is a little quick update on the Grenadier. I've had a chance to now spend another week in the Grenadier in a North American spec unit, rock crawling, much higher speeds in the sand, hill climbs. I kind of had the vehicle to do whatever I wanted with. It just keeps getting more and more impressive to me.
Yeah.
It's important to note that the drivetrain is well balanced to the intention of the vehicle, but it's not overly powerful. Like we've been having so many powerful vehicles in the marketplace now. In my mind, it feels very well balanced to the vehicle. I like the seating position. The lockers engage and disengage well. The traction control system works well. The tire size and the suspension dynamics are all really well balanced to the vehicle. So now that I've had some time to kind of have it in the wild, I like it even more than the first time I drove it. So the Grenadier keeps getting better and better, and it's getting closer and closer to being available. So by the time this goes live, there's a chance that we're going to have see some important announcements.
I'm excited.
Ineos.
I think it's a return to purpose for, like you said, there's a lot of 700 horsepower pickup trucks out there.
Yeah.
Or, I guess there's only 2, but you know the point.
Yeah. But this is built for overlanding.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a little plaque on the front of the truck, and it's one of my favorite things about it because it shows the intention. It's the mission statement of the business, built on purpose.
Yeah.
It is built on purpose to go around the world. It's built on purpose to go down to Panama. It's built to do those things.
I'm so excited for it.
And we get to buy one before we know it. It's just awesome.
Cool.
So, well, thanks, Matt. That's our mashup. Wow. Thanks. We'll have to do another episode just on the vehicles that you've bought and sold. So
yeah, need a few hours.
Thanks, Matt.
See ya.
All right. We'll talk to you all next time.